The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. The info you need to know about fantasy football heading into 2023. Who's injured? Who's not? How serious are these injuries? And are they reoccurring? These are the decisions that you need to make at draft time, which could affect you all year round. Hell, it could even affect you in week one on DraftKings. If you're like, oh, no, that guy's going to be fine. Turns out he's not so fine. He's playing on a limited basis. So now, if you're one of those people that are going to play injured players, I highly recommend you play in the Pat Mayo Experience DraftKings Listeners League. There's no rake. There's $75,000 in the prize pool, and the link is open down in the description right now. It's $15 to play, 3 max entry, no rake. It is the best tournament on DraftKings, and I want to win the money. So if you're like terrible, make terrible decisions, I already do that. So at least it's an even playing field for me. Additionally, if you want free, customizable, season-long projections for all teams, all players, and you can mess around with it, runthesims.com has that going on right now. All you need is an email address and get yourself in. If you buy the DFS and betting simulation package, there's no content on the site. It's all customizable simulations that you can run 10,000 of them in under 5 seconds. Well, if you get on the monthly, the weekly, or the annual plan, the one I highly recommend, use code MAYO to get 10% off. Plus, there is an addition of all the preseason games in terms of player projected playing time in those games. Who's playing, who's not, and our projections for how much they're going to play. There's huge contests on DraftKings during the preseason, and it's still one of the most beatable markets out there. So if you're going to get the season package anyway, or you're going to dip your toe in for a month, you may as well get it now at runthesims.com to get all of that stuff. So enough of me selling you on everything besides smashing the like and subbing to the channel and checking out the rankings from last week. Obviously, me, Jeff, and Tim have a ton of shit coming up as well. But Dr. Jesse Morse is joining me on the line to talk about injuries, as he does every single year. So you can hear what he has to say about all the players right now, should I say? Shouldn't say or, should say and. Because I don't want you tuning out or pressing stop on Apple Podcasts right now. Leave a review while you're there. You got packages, you're emailing people, you're updating your draft guide. So tell everyone where they can find it.
Sure. So easiest way, if you want to get a sample, is check out my Twitter feed. You'll see the pinned tweet, and it has like kind of ideas what it is, and full analysis of all the rookies, which is kind of hard to find. Full analysis of breakdowns of all the major, the guys were wondering about. Is Lamar's knee actually 100%? Is Kyler actually going to play in week 1? How worried are we about Cooper Kupp and OBJ and, some of the other guys that, and then there's a lot of deep dive in it. So at the fantasydoctors.com, you can check it out. And there's also a sleeper TFD. If you're on sleeper, use that code, deposit $20, and you can get the draft guide for free.
I see. I like that. Get the affiliate fees on the way and pay people off with some sort of, that's what I do. Like I get the biz. I know what's going on here. So I do want to start with quarterbacks, and want to start with Joe Burrow, actually, out of anyone, because he was sort of the big name news that popped up throughout the course of the preseason so far. It's a calf strain, at least it looks like. I thought it was an Achilles when I first saw him getting carted off, and that turned out not to be the case. Not great news, because I filmed my wide receiver ranking show about 3 minutes after I saw that video, and it kind of spooked me when it came to like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But it does seem like he's going to be okay with the grade of calf strain, right?
Yeah. So first off, calf strains suck. They're awful. They have very, very, in general, they're very poor healing. If you've had one, you feel like you got shot in the back of the leg. They do not heal quickly. They are notorious for re-injury. The good news is that this was early enough in camp, and he actually injured it the day before, in my opinion, because he had a sleeve on the day he injured it, but not the day before, which means that he tweaked it the day before, tried to push through, and made it much worse. It's likely a grade 1 because he doesn't have a limp, he doesn't have a sleeve, or he's not in a boot. So the good news is he should be good to go for week 1. I know Jamar was saying, hey, we should keep him to week 5. That's overkill. I get it, but it's just too risky. No concerns with any of the players affiliated or indirectly affiliated with him, and no really changes for him. Maybe he doesn't run as much in the first couple of games, and he does run a little bit, but annoying injury. Thankfully, not Achilles. That would have been a game changer. But it is the dreaded calf. Caps and groins are very similar. They both linger.
Noted high-level athlete Pat Mayo has suffered many a calf strain in my day. And I can tell you, it is very reoccurring to the point where I eventually tore my soleus once and then started getting calf strains again. And then I tore like the meaty head up at the top and like actually had to go rehab that and actually laid off of it. It wasn't just like, oh, it barely hurts today. Let me go for a run. That's a really bad idea, as it turns out.
Unfortunately, the soleus is the one that's closest to the bone. That's the one that keeps us upright, like without like walking. The gastroc is the one on the back that you always see. That's the one that propels us. So that's what he likely strained. It's usually the medial or inner head towards the bottom because there's a section that doesn't heal, that has a very poor blood supply, and that's usually where it injures.
I didn't know the soleus was a thing until I tore it.
There's a lot of muscles you don't know of things until you tear them. There's something called a plantaris that runs like parallel across the back of the calf, closest to the bone, that some people have and some people don't, that you can tear. And it feels like you got shot, but it's not a big deal.
I remember I went to rehab for it, and I was like, oh yeah, calf raises. Perfect. They're like, no. Like calf raises are going to hit the other part of your calf. What you need to do is like lean forward as much as you can and then do calf raises. I was like, that sounds awful. And it was awful.
Yeah. Yes. If anybody's ever had a calf strain, they understand how bad this injury is. Just be happy it wasn't the Achilles. You just leave it at that.
What do we think about the chances? Like if he does play in week 1, which he expects to right now, like, is there a chance this props back up in week 2, week 3, and he'll actually miss extended time?
Unfortunately, I think it is a possibility. I hope they were very aggressive. I would have hit it with PRP or probably stem cells or something along those lines. Because there's really no surgery. There's good rehab, but you're going to do that either way. I would say he's probably going to, if this is only a grade 1, maybe a 10 or 20% chance of re-injury. If this was a grade 2, that would have been higher. But I think I'm not overly worried. I think they're going to be smart about him. I just don't think he's going to be super mobile. And they're going to be really careful with him heading into week 1, because this can derail their season early if he's out a month or something. Whereas, I mean, there's no good time to have it, but if you're going to have it, you want it in preseason when it really doesn't matter per se.
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of guys trying to get that out of the way in the preseason right now. With the piling up list. We're barely a week into camp as it started already. Let's talk Lamar, though. Like, what residual effects do you see from Lamar, and how much do you think that's going to impact him?
So this is one of those controversial ones that if you ask most physicians that know what he did and know how to rehab it, or most of the PTs that rehab this, they're going to tell you, oh, he's fine. But they're making assumptions that I didn't make because I happen to know who he trains with and where he trained, which is about 10 minutes that way. As a result, I have concerns. I'm not giving you specifics. I will just say it's a mindset and mentality thing. And while the knee should be 100% from the injury, these are stubborn and they don't always heal. The best way I can describe it is like sitting on a bar stool and 2 of the legs are loose. You have no idea which way it's going to go. That's the PCL. That's the point of it. It's to prevent kind of rocking. And unfortunately, when it's angry or when it's not tight, his knee's unstable. So I don't think he's going to run as much this year, given the offense. But I don't think he's, it doesn't going to take a whole lot to tweak this again, which is concerning to me. And I also have some reservations about the Ravens medical staff, which further complicates this.
Well, how about, that doesn't sound great. So maybe I'll have to,
I know.
People can go check out the wide receiver rankings. I didn't know what to do with these guys anyway. So bump them all down a little bit. Maybe that's the way to play it.
Bateman's finally back on the field. OBJ possibly tweaked something today. Flowers looks ridiculous. So he, in my opinion, he's the guy to own. I love Bateman, but it's one thing after another with him, so it's like, as much as I want to say Bateman is the guy and he's the alpha, OBJ's back-to-back ACLs at 30. Like, how much does he really have left in the tank? I don't know. But can he catch 10 to 15 passes a game? Probably not. But we'll see. I have no idea. Maybe Andrews is the guy and you fade all the wide receivers.
Well, what do you do with Odell? Like you said, 10 catches a game might be out of the realm of possibility, but I didn't think he would have come back last time, and he did. Now, it's another of the same injury again.
Yeah.
But he did take the entire year off, so at least theoretically it should be fine, shouldn't it?
Yes, I'm not overly worried about the knee. I'm just worried he hasn't been fantasy relevant since 2018. Like, many people that are probably listening to this weren't even playing fantasy then. Like, that was with Saquon's rookie year. That was a long time ago. That, like, when so it's like, hey, can he be a wide receiver 30 to 50? There's a lot of those. Remove his name, look at his stats. He wouldn't even be relevant. He's a big name, but if you remove his stats for his current situation, he's probably not a reason to target him, and that's why his ADP is where it is.
Tyler, I think, is a really interesting one because there's two ways that the Cardinals can play this. They can rush him back and try to win a few games, or if they get too deep into the season and he's not yet playing and they haven't won a game or have won one game, like they are not favored in any of their 17 games this year. So they're probably going to be pretty bad. They have the best odds to be the worst team in football at DraftKings Sportsbook. That, I don't know, maybe you get to November and you're 0-10 or something like that, and you say, you know what? Maybe you want to set out the entire year and we'll roll with the rest of these losers that we've been running out there and we'll get the number one pick.
And then we'll trade you and you still get all your money.
Yeah.
So this is one of those situations. I was tweeting about it today, yesterday, whatever day it was. And I'm like, if this is up to Kyler, he's playing week 1. This is just who he is. Elite athlete. Most people don't take him as that because he's kind of a whiny baby, supposedly. But he was the 9th pick in the MLB draft like several years ago. I mean, that's very, very high level. And then he was the first pick in the NFL draft. That's never happened before. He's been a top 5 to 7 points per game guy since he's been in the league. Unfortunately, half of his rushing yards last year were on designed runs. That's not going to happen this year if he's on the field because of that ACL. His offensive line is awful. His weapons are okay. We'll see what McBride can do. We'll see if Hollywood can stay healthy. Dortch maybe, Rondell maybe, but Nuke's gone. Connor, So it's just, are they tanking for Caleb? Do they even really need to tank? They can actually try to play and lose? So would I be surprised if he was on the pup? Nope. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
What if you had to give like an estimation, your best guess of when we see Kyler this year? Like the early reports is that he would miss all year. Then it was like, oh, maybe it's December. And it seems like the timeline has been pushed up a little bit more and a little bit more the closer we get to the season. But I mean, what is he going to be 9 months out trying to play on a torn ACL?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, and you can do it. And several of the quarterbacks have done it. He's obviously a little bit different than the regular quarterbacks, but in terms of rushing, but could he play week 1? Yes. Do I think he will? No. I think and the problem is if you put him on the pup, you do 6 weeks, if I remember correctly. So it's not like it's a couple games. Would it be smart to hold him out? Yes. If he had what we call a repair, a meniscal repair and an ACL, yes, it would be in his best interest. Does that mean that's what he wants to do? Probably not. Is he's going to want to play his game, and he's probably not going to trust that knee a whole lot, at least not as the year goes on, he will, but not initially. So it's like, even when he's out there, how pretty or ugly is this going to be?
The UCL is a little, obviously, it's not on your knee, but Brock Purdy sustained it at the end of the season. Then he came in trying to throw basically with his left hand in a playoff game to show you how the depth was working for the 49ers at that point. How far out from a torn UCL or UCL surgery until you're back to 100% again?
So the cool thing about his situation, first of all, the story itself is really cool, but this is not a common injury in football. There's only been 2 other quarterbacks that we know of over the past 20 years that have suffered a variety of this injury. Jake Delhomme way back when, and then Nick Mullins a couple of years ago.
Didn't Josh Allen have some sort of tweak to this last year?
He had a sprain, but it wasn't a full thickness tear.
Okay.
That was the only time he's missed games in his entire career, Josh Allen. He missed 4 games in his rookie season. He tweaked that same elbow, obviously, this year, but he played through it for whatever reason. He probably could have took time off, but he didn't. This is a little bit worse because he had a full thickness tear or a much larger tear. It was likely what we call acute as opposed to more of a chronic wear and tear, what he would have required Tommy John, which is what Delhomme had. The only person that we know for a football player that's a quarterback that had this surgery is Nick Mullins, who was also a 49ers backup, which is kind of weird, and he backed up Kirk Cousins last year, so he didn't really need to do a whole lot. So we don't really have a good frame of reference. Like, hey, the N of 1, like literally now there's an N of 2. But he's looked pretty good at about 5-ish months out. So we didn't know how this is going to play out, and it looks like he's doing great. I mean, in my opinion, it's his job to lose.
Is there, almost like we see with the soft tissue with the calf, that there's a chance for reoccurrence, like a probability of reoccurrence? Is this something that once it's fixed, it's done, or is it always going to be on its last thread?
So no, the good thing about this is it was relatively healthy before that hit. So it wasn't, and that's why he didn't require the full Tommy John, which is basically a reconstruction. This was basically reattaching it and putting what they call an internal brace, almost like a big stitch. And the good news is that the throwing motion for football is completely different than baseball. Baseball, you need the UCL or you can't throw the ball at all. Football, you really don't need the UCL a whole lot, but it does play a role in some capacity. It's more forearm and shoulder. So I'm not really overly worried about this. He's gaining his strength. He's gaining his range of motion. He probably perfected his mechanics with, going back to the board. But I'm not really worried about compensating injuries. He's just going to have to get that fatigue level up, pass through that.
Based on their moves, it does seem like the 49ers are somewhat worried about it. Like, why else bring in Sam Darnold?
Well, if we remember way back when, first of all, he was cheap. But second, Shanahan wanted him in the draft. He's got a cannon. We know that. I just don't think he processes quickly. So if you spoon feed him, I think he would be really good, actually. Lance is a genetic freak and could be really good. They haven't given him the time of day, and unfortunately, he's had some weird injuries. I think they were rolling the dice early, and they said, we don't know how this is going to play out for Purdy, so let's just, do it. Let's just go with the flow, and we'll go from there.
Do you have worries about Tua outside of reoccurring, like taking another hit and having another concussion, his career being over or something like that? Outside of the head problems, which are massive problems, is there anything else with Tua that we should be concerned about?
That's a good question. Initially, when he had his bad hip, which was a fracture dislocation, banana injury, serious injury, in Alabama, I was like, I don't know if he's ever going to step foot on the field again. Not only did he step foot on the field, I mean, he was a high-level pick, and he's looked pretty good. He's had his fair share of injuries. He's had some thumbs. He's had some weird stuff. He bulked up a ton this year. We haven't seen him live, but I've seen photos of him, and he put on at least 15 to 20 pounds. I mean, he's big. I'm telling you, he's big. So I don't know if that's going to help him with his concussions, but I'm not overly worried. He's not a mobile guy. Out of all the guys that run quarterback-wise, he's not one of them. So, I mean, I'm sure he can move a little bit, but do I have concerns about his hip in the long term? Probably, yes, I should. But at this point, I don't really know what to speculate because he doesn't really move a whole lot anyway. My biggest thing for him is concussions, obviously. And besides that, I don't really have them. But unfortunately, they're so vigilant on him. One hit, and it could be a month, or more longer.
Now, when you say you've seen him bulk up, was he walking down the road in Miami next to you? Are you on some sort of shirtless to an email chain that I don't know about? What is it?
No, I know his trainer. His trainer goes by the name of Perform with instead of the F, it's a 4. So just go on Instagram and you'll see him. He looks huge. And I know they train about 20 minutes north of here. So I haven't been there just because I haven't, but yes, from what I've seen, and I've talked to Nick, which is Perform, about him, and he said, yeah, he put on about 15 to 20 pounds. From what he could tell, he's been doing, I think, judo and jujitsu or Thai, one of the mixed martial arts to help him learn how to fall better, I guess, is probably the way they framed it.
Yeah, he's not a great faller. I think it was judo that they were talking about, because using your momentum to make sure you hit the ground okay. It's actually quite logical. So I want to see how that turns out for him.
Yeah,
tell me a little.
I'm hoping the best for him.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about Stafford and Kupp, because Kupp seems, at least from all reports that I've heard, seems to be fine. The Stafford thing seems like more of a mystery. But if he's fine, shouldn't they just be awesome again? Like those two in particular?
They should be. I'm not worried about. I'm a little worried about Stafford's neck/head because he had back-to-back I don't know if they call it a concussion, but I wouldn't be surprised if he also had a concussion when he had his neck injury. And it was a bruised spinal cord. If he wasn't set to earn $120 million guaranteed, I'm pretty sure he probably would have retired. But I don't blame him for coming back. He has the craziest injury history you'll probably ever see. It makes Gronk's look like normal, which is kind of funny. Stafford has had insane number of injuries. He is a statue, which is probably going to hurt him in the long run or again this season. But I think they probably addressed his elbow. I think his neck should be good. I'm not super concerned about his neck. Concussion risk is always there, but not overly. Kupp, on the other hand, his high ankle, he probably could have came back last year if Stafford was there last year. So I'm not worried about that. The hamstring is a little bit concerning. It sounds like it was on the milder side and they caught it early, which is good. For a top 5 pick, I have to pump the brakes a smidge because he is over 30. You could justify them protecting him a little bit, kind of like last year, but is there a guy that has higher average points per game than Justin Jefferson? It's Cooper Kupp each of the past 2 years. Obviously, you're baking in some risk there with Stafford, and now with a mild hamstring injury coming off of a high ankle over the age of 30. So you're kind of setting yourself up. You're rolling the dice a little bit, but if you can get him late one, I don't hate it. Or obviously a point, DFS is a different monster. You could easily do that.
Let's go from a guy over 30 to a guy who's barely over 20. Garrett Wilson has a low ankle sprain right now during the preseason. Is that just, hey, Garrett, you're doing good. Take some time off here and make sure this isn't so bad?
Yeah, so I actually happened to see, I don't say live, but there was a video, and it could have been bad. He landed, he came back, and when he stepped, instead of landing, he rolled, and he was stepping on this part with the foot up here. It was pretty gnarly. Thankfully, he didn't suffer a Jones fracture, which is where that fifth rolls underneath, and he could have fractured it. That was my initial concern. Once they said it was just a low ankle, I was like, that's fine. This is a basketball player landing on another player's foot, and you roll out. Very common, most common injury in orthopedics. Not overly concerning. They want to tighten that up. I would personally inject it because it's going to get loose again. And in general, he's going to be able to cut, shake. He's going to be able to justify all of his moves. Not have to worry about landing on other people's feet. And if they do, can he handle it again? So I think they were being smart. He should be back on the field. If he didn't get back today, he should be back in the next couple of days.
How bad is this Kadarius Toney thing?
I was talking to Scott Barrett about this today. This poor kid. Okay, so he's played almost 2 years, roughly 2 years full of NFL games, right? He's had one game over 70% snaps. One game. He's had the craziest combination of injuries. He's a yak monster. I want him to be healthy, but he's not. He tweaked his knee last year, had a scope. Tweaked his knee again, had the scope on the same knee, meaning you remove some of the meniscus. He's had soft tissue injuries. My concern with him is not his ability to catch. It's the volume and his ability to stay on the field. On a game-per-game basis, okay, maybe. But he's got a ton of competition. He's got Rice. He's got MVS. He's got Sky Moore. He's got, John, whatever his name is. He's got Kelsey. He's got McKinnon. There's so many people. I'm like, is he going to get more than 5 or 6 targets?
Probably not. No. Maybe if he plays, they do. The one thing I did notice after the Chiefs acquired him throughout the playoffs, it's not that he had to play the 80% to get his work, because when he was on the field, they just designed plays for him. They actively wanted to get the ball in his hands, except he can't get on the field at this point.
Yeah. So for a season long, I'm like, there's other people I want in that area that just don't have the same level of risk. They may not have his upside, but they have a much higher floor. If you're playing for the moon, there's a reason why he was a first round pick. We know that, but I have serious concerns about his ability to stay healthy. If he's on the field, he's going to get the ball. Like you just said, how much is he going to be on the field? I don't want to have to worry about, hey, can I start him this week? That's a headache.
What can you tell me about Michael Thomas at this point? It looks like he's fine, but Lord knows.
This poor kid, unfortunate, has had a significant crazy past couple of years. All foot and ankle. After that gnarly ankle injury that eventually bothered him again the next year, he ended up dislocating his second toe last year, which is as bad as it sounds. I was like, oh, you stub your toe. No. You can't put your weight on that part of the foot. And they tried to rehab it. It's just you need the surgery, and that's it. At his ADP, given what he doesn't really have to do this year, Olave's there. Rashid, Shaheed should be okay after his groin. Taysom has always been a ninja. We'll see what the running backs do. I like what his potential. We know he can be a beast. He doesn't need to catch the ball 10, 15, 20 times like he did a couple of years ago. I don't mind him buying low because he's been able to stay healthy until it was a crazy, weird injury.
So you would classify this under crazy, weird injury, not something that is just perpetually going to happen to him over and over.
Yeah, no, I think it was just the first one was a mismanagement, whether it was him or the surgeon or whoever, and he'll admit that to you. But this one was just it was like turf toe, but it was on the next toe, basically.
Okay,
and it was just unfortunate, and when it's this joint right here, and when you dislocate it, like you can't even fathom walking, never mind running routes. Like it's a painful injury. So. I felt bad. If it was at the end of the year, you wouldn't even really thought of it. It was like, he missed a game or two, whatever. But it was on week, 4 or 6, so that was it.
You brought up Shaheed. Him and Traquan Smith both suffered groin injuries. I assume that they're of a low-grade sprain or low-grade, whatever it might be, because you don't seem to be concerned.
So groins are traditionally annoying, just like calves. As long as they're a grade 1, they're usually about 10 to 14 days, and they're okay. The grade 2s are a different story. That's Curtis Samuel had him a couple of years ago. Remember, he just didn't play the whole year. That was basically because he had a bad grade 2 and he kept re-injuring it and eventually had surgery. But I'm not super worried. We have 3-4 weeks until it's go time. As long as they rehab it, I think we're okay. If it's a sports hernia, which it doesn't sound like it is, that's a separate discussion. They need to have surgery on that.
Amari Cooper has just been kind of dinged up at practice. I'm not even really sure what the injury is, or is this just veterans week off? Amari, go chill out for a bit.
Yeah, I think they're just being smart. They know what he had. They know what he is. And they know, yeah, maybe nice to get a rapport with Watson, but they already had, I'm not really worried. I think they're just being smart. If this was week 1, he'd be playing. I just think they're being smart. I love what they're doing, Elijah Moore. We don't know what the injury is. I haven't heard specifics. He's a veteran, elite wide receiver that should be in that 2 to 3 round range, So I don't mind him. I have him on a couple teams already.
Okay, so the biggest one from the preseason, I want to get your take on this, is that everyone loves to react, especially overreact to any bit of news, regardless of the context that's going on. Because this happened with Calvin Ridley. It was last week, or I think it was towards the end of last week. It's oh my God, he broke his toe, he broke his ankle, he's walking off the field. It turned out his cleats were too tight, and that's what I heard today. That's all it was. And he's back, he's fine. But do you find yourself do you find it's better to do an assessment, get caught on something that might not be true, rather than play it the other way, where it's well, let's wait this one and see? I know you like to be ahead of the game on this stuff.
So this is where it's tricky. In my career, earlier when I used to do this, I guess some people could call me an alarmist per se, which I kind of hate that word, but I see where it comes from. But when you step back, you're certain injuries are suck, and you can be alarmist because it's appropriate. But sometimes you just got to take a breather and say, hey, are they telling us all the information? Because look, this could have been a bad turf toe, which is bad. Javonte missed a month. Or this could have been something as stupid as wearing the wrong size cleats, which is a really funny thing. But, we're good, and this kid but you got to remember, he's had a history of a broken foot that he played the entire 21 season on. So you have there's a little reason to be a little concerned with him.
Let's go to running backs. Tony Pollard, the fractured tibia. He's ready for the beginning of camp. He looks fine. Do you have any concerns about his durability this year, regardless of what his role is going to be? That's a separate discussion. But in pure injury terms, do you worry for him?
No, he's actually been really healthy throughout his career. They've ramped him up appropriately, almost like a baseball pitcher, where they give him a little bit extra innings every year. That's kind of how they've been with him. And he's been able to stay healthy. It was an unfortunate injury. He had a bad high ankle, which he had surgery on, and then he also had a fibula fracture, which probably healed on its own, based on what we're hearing. Very similar to Rashod Penny's, but Penny's was kind of a little bit more worse. But I'm not really worried about his volume. He's ridiculously explosive. As far as we can tell, he's getting tons of volume. I love him. I have him in my top 3, which sounds crazy, but I think it. I think it's possible.
See, I have him at number 3 as well. So if you're not concerned about the injury, I'm not concerned about the injury, which means all volume all the time. Hell, even bring back Zeke. Just don't give him 1 yard line carries, and we'll be good on this. How about Breece Hall though? Like, is he a to start the year on pup candidate, or do you think he'll play week 2? Let's say.
I think he plays week 1. I think they're being smart with him. I think they're being cautious with him. I think they were kicking the tires on Dalvin. I think they will get a veteran. Abani Kanda looked okay. I think this is more going to be Michael Carter, who hasn't looked the worst, but he's more of a receiving back. And I think realistically, he will be probably close to 100% by week 4 or 5. He has that rare combination of relatively clean ACL, elite score, great age. I wouldn't say if there's someone that can challenge Adrian Peterson's quote unquote record, this would be of the ilk. He would be along that. This is like a Saquon-esque caliber. He fits that model.
So there's no potential lingering issues from the surgery he had?
No. I mean, there's always, so his was relatively straightforward. What we know is maybe a little bit of meniscus and an ACL. So he didn't have the bad LCL or the PCL or the PLC, we call it, or the MCL. So his was relatively quiet and straightforward. He should be okay. Obviously, you can always have compensating injuries like hamstrings and other random things that can happen, and that's part of the beast. And Godwin had that early last year, but he still finished great. So overall, I'm not overly worried. I would prefer him as my RB2 or flex as opposed to my RB1, unless you're just kind of not punting, but you're not targeting any of the top 12 guys. Does he have top 10 percentile? Yes. My biggest concern with Breece this year is how much volume is he going to get?
You could see him playing more of almost like what Pollard did last year, but kind of flipped around, where he's still the lead guy, but the lead guy isn't 90% of the touches guy.
Yeah. And Pollard went nuclear, and he was ridiculously efficient. That was the only reason he finished top 10. I mean, he wasn't even close to any of the other guys in touches. Him and Ramondre were both under 280 touches, which is impressive for a top 10 back. But I mean, I think he could pull that off. If you look at Breece Hall's underlying numbers, they're ridiculous. Number 2 in elusiveness. He's number 2 in YPRR. Like, he's way up there. The metrics fit the caliber. The volume is my only concern, and as long as he doesn't have any associated, compensating injuries per se.
And so would you feel more comfortable about the health of Breece Hall or Javonte Williams at this point post-surgery?
I know it sounds funny because Javonte didn't hit pup. Javonte's cleared for contact, but Javonte's injury, he's doing things that I can't explain, which is just part of the freak. And a lot of these guys are that way. But in terms of complications within that knee, I have a lot more concerns about Javonte. Javonte's is very similar to J.K. Dobbins in ACL. A little bit different, but very similar. Breece's is much more straightforward. I wouldn't be surprised if it took Javonte a little bit longer to get back to 100%, even if it's by mid-season. Whereas I think we'll see Breece closer to 100% by probably week 6-ish or so, 4 to 6, somewhere on there.
Okay, well, how about J.K. Dobbins?
Yeah, good question. I want to say this isn't an injury and this is his contract. Is it fair to say that his knee will never be 100% pre-injury? I think he would admit that. He'd be stubborn and say no, it is. But this is just such a hard injury. When you tear the posterior lateral corner, which is what we call the PLC, this is a hard injury. This is a very frustrating injury. You can't rotate and cut your leg, like you want to. He had scar tissue buildup. He had a second surgery. He looked great, but the problem is, A, he's not making the money he wants, and B, he's not much of a receiver. At least he hasn't been in the NFL. So it's like you're supposed to lead the backfield, but are you going to get on the field or?
Yeah, but for injury wise this year going into it, he should be 17 games if all goes right for him. It's not
he should be as healthy as he can be.
So it's not like he'll all of a sudden be like, oh, you're on the pup for reasons we don't know. Like, it sounds like what you're talking about with Javonte Williams. Like, it's not like he'll be on the pup, but there's still probably more of a chance that it could be versus someone like Dobbins at this point.
Yeah, if you told me Dobbins was going to play all 17 games and could lead the league in rushing, I say yes, that's very possible.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if everything would have to go perfect, but yeah.
How about Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet? It seemed like, here we have this duel. Now they're both hurt.
And not only that, McIntosh sprained his knee the other night. So now it's like the scariest thing right now is to be a Seahawks running back. Like you have like a target on you. Thankfully, Charbonnet, we heard it was a shoulder injury, possible serious. It must not have been nothing because he's already in pads. So not overly concerning with him. They're being smart with Kenneth Walker, which is appropriate. He did have a groin operation last year for a sports hernia early, basically about this time. So obviously, I don't know if it's same side or opposite side, so they have to be careful there. We'll expect to see McIntosh out probably a couple of weeks, maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Wouldn't be surprised if they signed a veteran because of this. But I'm not ready to freak out about Kenneth Walker. And I think Zach Charbonnet is kind of a sneaky buy low.
Okay, well, I mean, I've been trying to draft Khalil Herbert wherever I can. People are like, oh my God, Donta Foreman. Oh my God, Rochon Johnson. Watch out for him. But no, he's hurt now too. Is he going to be okay for week 1, it looks like?
All of them are going to be fine. I actually met Khalil in this offseason. He was training down here. Oh my God, his quads are huge. I was like, bro, what are you doing? Like, literally, that's exactly what I said to him. I was like, your quads are huge. Like, he was training hard. He looks good. He's not much of a pass catcher. He's not very good at pass, protection for.
Okay. I always wondered this. So, I mean, I've heard this come up a few times with Herbert and how not good he is in pass protection. I think you could put 5 guys back there with Justin Fields, and he would find a way to get sacked.
That's a separate discussion. Yeah, I mean, and so supposedly they say Rochon is really good at pass protection. I don't know. All I know is what the data says. But either way, I think all of them play. There's a reason why Rochon was very elite. He was actually a quarterback before he became a running back. He was obviously stuck behind Bijan, so he was stuck. Foreman is a plower, though. I would not be surprised if Foreman got work. I think Justin is going to have a lot less scrambling this year because he has a lot more weapons, especially DJ Moore. But I think the running game is going to be part of that.
Zach Moss broke his forearm. When can we expect him back? Because all of a sudden, I mean, I think that Jonathan Taylor is going to be there in week 1 and playing and not on the contract that he wants, but that's just going to be the case. I don't think he gets traded. And if he does, we start kind of trickling down in the Colts running back room where you have Zach Moss, but he's hurt. Then you have Deion Jackson. Like, that's basically kind of it. So when do you think that Moss would return from this injury?
Yeah, so I've actually had this injury twice. These are typical 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how he broke it. I'm not overly concerned. But the only problem is he can't really do a whole lot right now. He just can't put any contact to it because you will re-break it. Once he's good, he should be fine. Obviously, this is kind of a weird situation. I don't think Irsay's going to give in. I think he's basically going to eventually play or give up a lot of money, which would be kind of stupid. I think Deontay Jackson's kind of sneaky. Evan Hull is potential there. But I think this is going to be an ugly running back by committee if JT is not playing. So pick your poison.
Did Anthony Richardson have a deviated septum? Was that a thing that happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He had deviated septum. He had surgery on a Sunday, from what we tell, unless they said their day wrong. And he played, I think, Tuesday. I think he was on the field Tuesday. I mean, remember, he's wearing a helmet, so it's not like. But yeah.
Okay. I mean, maybe that helps him breathe better, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it's helping him breathe because a lot of guys are mouth breathers, and when they should be nose breathers, because nose breathing will help lower your heart rate, I believe. I think that's a correlation, if I remember correctly. And a lot of guys just aren't good at sleeping. If their septum's all screwed up, their sinuses are all screwed up, and it kind of messes with them. So it's a proactive thing that they're doing it. Ideally, you do it 2 months ago, but you do it, it's done.
So we've talked about a couple post ACL things as it pertains to running backs, whether it's a quarterback, a wide receiver. What about when you're up there? I mean, you talked about Beckham being, he's in his 30s. He has 2 of these knee surgeries. How can he do anything? How is Zach Ertz going to stand? He's like 71 years old.
He's 32, 33. He's one of the two. I think he starts on PUP. I think this is either his last year or one of his last years, depending on how he does. McBride is kind of sneaky, so I don't mind McBride. And I think realistically, this I think he takes it slow. This is a tough injury for a veteran guy like that. Not many guys in their early 30s come back from an ACL and look really good. So I don't know if he's going to contribute a whole lot this year. I would not be surprised if he was PUP and then come back mid-year or something like that.
You mean to get traded?
Probably, yeah.
That seems like if he needs to play like a game or 2 to show that the knee is okay if he starts on PUP, and then they can get rid of him for a 5th round pick or something.
Correct. Yeah. And he'll play for hopefully a contending team and try to win another ring.
Is there anything serious going on with Darren Waller? I saw it was a finger dislocation, but is that going to be
so it sounds like it was
tape it together?
I didn't hear specific. All I heard was that they put it back in place and he was fine, which can happen.
All right. So
they're not all that way, but there are some that can do that. He looks ridiculous. Obviously his injury history is pretty bananas, but he looks like unstoppable again. I think he got a little fire lit up. But I think he could be a problem if there's a guy coming for that number 2 slot. If anyone's going to dethrone Kelsey, I think he definitely qualifies for that. I have some concerns about his injury history, but for his ADP, give me him over Pitts.
So, but I mean, you're not too concerned about the finger. You're just concerned about the myriad injuries that he's had in the past.
Correct. Yeah. He's already back in the field. So if it was anything serious, they would have kept him off.
Any worries about Kyle Pitts coming back from the injury?
He did not look very good a couple weeks ago. He was wearing the knee brace. This was not a straightforward injury. They didn't tell us the whole story. He supposedly tore the MCL, which is this big common one on the inside of the knee. But there's 3 grades, 1, 2, 3. Ones are pretty straightforward. 2s are longer, but they usually don't undergo surgery. He supposedly had a 2, but underwent surgery and missed the rest of the year. I have concerns about a possible meniscal tear, because the MCL is attached to it. And I have concerns about a lateral injury to the knee that is not related at all, but played a role. He was wearing a brace way, way, way longer than I thought he would have been. He was over 8 months out, and he should have been cleared by 6. So I don't know what was going on, but he looks much better now. I just have concerns about this passing game overall.
As do I. I'm not a huge believer in the Falcons, but I just want to make sure that he's going to be there week 1 and he's not going to suffer some sort of like weird injury in week 2 that's related to this. He suffers another one, nothing I can do about that. But I just want to know proactively, is there something I should be watching?
I have some reservations about that knee. I do. I don't feel like it's quite 100%. I don't know if he's going to get there. It really depends on what he did. He didn't have an ACL, presumably, because we would have heard about that. But they changed his route patterns. I don't know if that's the way they want to use him or what's going on with his knee. I don't know. He was looking much better in videos last week, so that's good. But I kind of hold my breath with him, which is kind of unfortunate, but I do hold my breath with him.
So it seems like the 2 guys that something seems kind of fishy would be Dobbins, just because question marks, and this Kyle Pitts thing doesn't sound great.
Yeah, and I don't know if Dobbins is banged up or if it's a contract or both. And then we hear about Jonathan Taylor. Is his back? I didn't injure my back. All I saw was him walking, and he did not look comfortable. It could have been a weird fluky thing, but we saw him take like 10 or 15 steps, and he did not look very comfortable. And then Pitts, I think he's going to work off the rust. I don't know. I just got one of those gut instincts.
What are we doing with Logan Thomas besides just staying the hell away from him?
I actually didn't mind him this year for a bounce back, but now he's dealing with a calf. I think Howell or Brissett or whoever ends up quarterbacking, this team kind of has some sneaky weapons. And I don't mind Logan Thomas. He's finally second year back from ACL and kind of like Ertz. Like, this is a tough injury. Overall, I hope he does okay, but they're going to be careful with him like they're careful with Burrow.
Yeah. And is this grade of calf strain, do you know, any more severe than Burrow's?
We have not heard anymore. They kind of commented briefly on it today, but they didn't really give us any more insight. I think if he's up and running in the next week or up and like not bad, then it's a 1. If he's like, no, he's still a couple weeks away, that's probably a 2, and that's a little bit of a concern.
So Nyheim Hines is out for the year. This we know. Tim Patrick is out for the year again in the preseason for the second consecutive year. Bad news for Tim Patrick. Feel bad for the guy. And KJ Hamler's probably not going to play either, which means Mims can get into that mix, or maybe Cortland Sutton can actually do something. Who knows what's going to go on with him? But is there anyone else that we haven't talked about that you think should be on our radar as a potential injury concern?
Jimmy Garoppolo, just because of his history. I think that's a given.
What's the deal with him right now?
I mean, he's actually really good when he's healthy. If you look at the stats, he's actually really good.
But is he? But like they trade for him or they sign him, and then it's like, oh yeah, he's great, and then it's like, oh no, he's actually secretly hurt. But now it's like, oh no, he's secretly okay.
So he had a Liz Frank, but it was a variant, and the initial diagnosis is no, you don't need surgery. And then when they evaluate him, like, yeah, your foot's still not healed, you need surgery. That's why they had to pivot and sign an addendum or whatever it was. And he's back on the field. He's probably not 100% yet, but he should be closer to 100% by week 1. I just have concerns about him staying healthy, and I think that's justified. Deebo always concerns me given his significant injury history. He seems to be an every other year guy where he explodes, and maybe that's this year again. But that concerns me a little bit. Those are the main ones. I'm trying to think who else is there that was injured that's coming back. Those are the main ones. Wan'Dale Robinson, unfortunately, is going to be tough with his ACL, and he's got a lot of competition ahead of him. Pickens should be 100% post. He had an ACL in his last year, so he's kind of over 2 years out now, so he should be normal by now. I think that's it. I'm sure there's a couple more, but those are the main ones that come to my head.
Yeah, we've ran the gauntlet with all the injuries, so people are up to date what the injuries are, how severe they are, what are the chances of them reoccurring. That's what the people want to know, Dr. Jesse Morse. Additionally, they do want to know where you can just email this information to them. So tell people again what they can get on to get the up-to-date news from you. Yeah,
so fantasydoctors.com. There's 3 packages. The injury draft guide is there. It gets updated weekly, rankings, all 2 cool types of stats and injuries and all types of stuff. And then I have the weekly injury report that you can see that I post on my Twitter. I do another one that gives percentages of the likelihood of that guy playing next week. That's kind of like the second part of the package. You can also do a sleeper, the sleeper ad where if you deposit over $20 into sleeper to play, we will send you the draft guide if you use the code TFD.
All right. Well, that will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. Follow the doc on Twitter at Dr. Jesse Morse. Follow me at the PME. I have far less relevant information that I'm tweeting out. So you probably just want to follow him, probably unfollow me if you need to keep those things in equilibrium. But if you want to keep following, it's at the PME. I'm always doing giveaways. Maybe that's one reason to stick around and to sub to this show, especially the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Subscribe, rate, and review 5 stars, or hold off like a week before I'm giving away like $1,000 or something like that. The Week 1 Listeners League is available now down in the description. Get your spot now before it's completely full, and go sub to Run the Sims. Cannot express enough how good this is for generating lineups, matching out prop bets, and running your own simulations in no time whatsoever. You're not going to find 10,000 simulations in under 5 seconds. Basically anywhere that you can customize, then build your projections and your lineups with. So runthesims.com, code Mayo, if you're just worried about season-long fantasy projections for your high-stakes league, your league with 9 buddies, whatever it might be. Just put in an email. You can get access to those completely free all the time. All right, I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
That Mayo experience! Experience!